G'day mate and welcome to Oxygen Not Included with me, Jetty. Today we're going to cover airlocks. Me and Nals are going to cover the different types of airlocks, what works, what doesn't, the pros and cons of different types, and Nals has already demonstrated the very first problem with the very first airlock. So I've got the inside of our base simulated over here at 1.5 kilos per tile worth of oxygen at 35 degrees. It's fairly nice, it's sort of the right pressure. On the other side, I actually have hell. I have 10 kilos per tile of polluted oxygen at almost 400 degrees. And as you can see, I've used a mechanized airlock here. Now, Oxygen Not Included does give you a couple of options for doorways. First off, we have the pneumatic door. Now, the problem with the pneumatic door is it lets gases in and out. So it doesn't really work for an airlock. Then we have a manual airlock and the mechanized airlock. Manual airlock works. I'll give it that much. The mechanized airlock works and runs a little bit faster if it's powered. All these examples are unpowered because honestly, 9 times out of 10, you don't have to power them. But if Nails was to wander in and out of this room, we can see he's going to open the door very slowly because it's unpowered, run in, get very hot, and then run back out. Unfortunately, he's going to wait for the door to shut, to then reopen, to unfortunately take a little bit of damage because it's really hot in the other room. If we look at our temperature overlay, we can, well, if we look at our gas overlay first, we can see a bunch of this polluted oxygen has escaped into the nice clean side of our base. It's also come in awfully hot. At the same time, our mechanized airlock itself is actually heating up. Now, I've made this airlock out of gold amalgam. You have a lot of different choices when it comes to actually making your buildings. I've used gold amalgam because it's got a fairly low, it's got the lowest thermal conductivity. If we go up to iron ore, we go up to 4, which means it'll transfer the heat between the two rooms even faster. Copper ore is at 4.5, and then aluminium ore is the absolute worst thing you want to do if you want to keep heat on one side of the room compared to the other, because it has a thermal conductivity of 20.5. But unfortunately, with Nails using this airlock, we've not only let polluted oxygen into our base, we're also constantly bringing a lot of heat and temperature transfer into the base. We have another option when it comes to airlocks. This is still using the exact same mechanical airlock, except as you can see, I've rearranged them in a pattern to have more thermal mass for the doors to more thermal mass for the heat to transfer through. And as we can see, before even Nails walking through the room, we're at over 215 degrees here. So this was 400 degrees. It's obviously cooled down by transferring a lot of its heat into these doors. And the oxygen side of the room is slowly starting to heat up. If we have Nails move through these doors, he's going to complain about the heat. He's going to continue complaining about the heat. But at the same time, we can see this oxygen flows in with Nails. Oh, Nails is really hurt. And the polluted oxygen is also going to flow in. But as the doors shut, anything stuck in these two middle doors is actually destroyed. And then if we have Nails, if he'll even make it back, we'll have the polluted oxygen will flow into this first door. Come on, Nails, you can do it. Into the second door. He didn't make it. Put the door back. Move Nails over there, and you can see anything in those two middle doors was destroyed. So this does a much better job of keeping your two separate gases apart. Let's go. Nails, come in, Nails. You can come down here, and we're even going to be nice enough to give you a medical bed. And Gossman can become our new volunteer. Now, going back to this method, it's still allowing the heat to transfer, but at least it's keeping the two gases separate. Now, there are many other choices. So if Gossman comes up here to help us, we now have a carbon dioxide lock. So a carbon dioxide lock is very easy to set up. The best way to set it up is literally move your dupe there, and put a couple of tiles, put a couple of doors. Yeah, it's pretty easy to get dupes stuck in an area. Have them just sit here for a little while until they breathe out enough carbon dioxide to form this lock. If we go over this materials overlay, because carbon dioxide is the heaviest gas, it's going to flow down this room. Really, Gossman, you had to fart? Sheesh. Anyway, again, I've got super hot air temperature on one side and pretty nice temperate air on the other side. We are getting a little bit of heat bleed through, but because carbon dioxide has absolute abysmal thermal conductivity, that heat's going to take a long time to transfer from one side of the room to the other. Best thing about this is Gossman can very, very quickly walk from one side to the other and run all the way away and hopefully not die. Our next step up in terms of airlocks. This one is a lot more effective at keeping the two rooms separated. Along with this is the first one where we actually keep really the temperatures separated. This is referred to as a water lock. So we've come in here and we've put in a couple of bottle emptiers either side. We've dropped in enough liquid in these tiles. So you need about 1,000 kilos here and really about 200 kilos in each one of these tiles. So it's what? 8 bottles that the duplicates, 8 full bottles that duplicates need to empty. And now we can have Gossman move from one side to the other. Now, it does come with a small debuff. It does come with sopping wet. Because Gossman's going to get all the way into the water, all the way out of the water, he's going to have a stress of plus 20% for the next 0.2 of a cycle. So there's something you need to keep into consideration. Also, he's going to have to shake off the water every single time he passes through. So it does slow him down just a little bit. Our next one down here, and again, as said, this does a very good job of both isolating the two temperatures. And also, there is no way gas can accidentally slip from one side to the other. On a carbon dioxide lock, we can see that natural gas has invaded this tile and is passing, you know. There is always a chance you can have these tiles fill up with something other than carbon dioxide. Really, the only things heavier than oxygen, but lighter than carbon dioxide is natural gas and chlorine. So this is not a guaranteed when it comes to a carbon dioxide one. The next one we actually have is a double airlock. So, Gossman, you can't sleep. No, that's alright. We'll just wake you up when we get there. So, this is a double airlock, and as you can see, I've used normal tiles for a change. Every other example, we've used insulated tiles to try and stop that transfer. This is really when we come to really extreme environments. So, if this side is, well, this is only at 90 degrees. Let's just heat that back up again. 130 degrees. No, let's have a 242 degrees. Really, really hot. It is bleeding some temperature into this non-insulated tile. But really, at the end of the day, all your insulated tiles over time will absorb some of this heat. This method, it doesn't matter how hot this side is and how cold this side is, it will never bleed temperature across. Because right here in the middle, we actually have a vacuum. So if we have Gossman move here to here, he can move through this first water lock, and he's perfectly fine here till he farts, and then he releases natural gas everywhere, because he's a horrible, horrible, horrible duplicate. And then he can move on to the next side. Come on. And as I said, there'll be no actual temperature transfer from one to the other. And as you can see, he can path down, up, without too much trouble. It does mean you need to keep this room a vacuum. Easiest way to do that is literally just put in a pump. You can either have a proper size pump or a slightly smaller mini pump. And water locks, I always recommend that you actually have one extra tile in most cases on either side, because as you can see, carbon dioxide's pushed itself into this tile, which has magically pushed the water up higher. Yeah, oxygen not included and things can be a little bit weird at times. Can we not, Gossman? Go over there. Finish peeing. Okay, lastly, we have a hydrogen lock. Now, a hydrogen lock's a little bit different. It works on the same principle as a carbon dioxide lock, except hydrogen is the lightest gas. As always, I've used two very, very extremes. I've had polluted oxygen on one side at like 300 degrees, and oxygen at the other side at like 20 odd degrees. And we can see this does have a lot of heat bleeding across, because hydrogen is actually very, very good, has a high specific heat capacity, and has a reasonable heat conductivity. Much higher than a lot of the other gases like oxygen. Oxygen's down here at 0.24. Carbon dioxide is really, really bad at 0.015. But yeah, hydrogen is very, very good at thermally transferring between two zones. But it does give you an airlock that is pretty much unbreakable because hydrogen is the lightest gas. It's always going to float to the top of your base. And Gossman could quite easily pop up on his ladder, pop down the other side, and then hopefully pop back without dying. Come on, Gossman. As you can see, my polluted oxygen is staying on one side, my oxygen is staying on the other. Very, very effective. It does not run into the problem with natural gas and carbon dioxide flowing down and actually ruining your airlock. So this is a very, very capable airlock. Also, if you remember, it's not going to have that sopping wet debuff because they're not getting wet walking through this. They can wander through this perfectly fine. We're going to send... Oops. We're not going to send you there. We're going to throw you down there. And we're going to Hassan for my last example, which is our carbon dioxide airlock, but this time only using normal tiles. As you can see, it still gives us the bonus of Hassan can move left to right without too many problems. He doesn't carry any sort of debuff, but we do have that temperature bleeding through very, very fast because we haven't insulated the two zones. So that's pretty much it for our airlocks for this episode. I will be covering animals and hatches and all sorts of different things in the next episode. If you enjoy this sort of content and you found this video helpful, by all means click the like button. If you want to see more videos like this, more tips and tricks into Oxygen Not Included, by all means click the subscribe button because I'm going to have these coming out as often as possible. Thank you guys so much for watching. Do hope you've enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.